Welcome to our presentation on how to make our money work for democracy. As John mentioned, this is a re-recording of a presentation we did at the League of Women Voters National Convention. So thank you for being here. We're here because we believe it is possible to make money work for our vulnerable democracy, and we think the evidence of dysfunction points to the current money system as a significant obstacle to our League efforts for improvement. This session is sponsored by the League of Women Voters, Athens County, Ohio. A special thank you to Debbie Schmeeding, Mary Costello, and John and Susan Howell. Also involved in the planning are Lucille Eckridge from League of Women Voters, Bloomington, Illinois, Virginia Hammond, and me, Ryan Inger, both from League of Women Voters, Portland, Oregon. We are a group of multiple leagues and welcome anyone also interested in making money work for democracy. The topic for tonight's discussion, I will lay the foundation for why we think the League of Women Voters should advocate on how to make our money work for democracy. Virginia Hammond will relay how our money system functions today, and John Howell will share ideas on how we can make this happen. Thank you for sharing this space with us tonight. You may be wondering why we are asking you to consider the money system when there is so much on our plates in this national election season. Well, first, the election season will be over in November, right around the corner, and then League efforts to improve our democracy will continue. Empowering young voters will continue to be a major initiative of the League. We have found that the top issues for young people include inflation, cost of living, jobs that pay a living wage, affordable housing, gun violence, war, and climate change. Through our studies, we've come to believe that the money system today plays such an important role in these issues and in every issue of interest to the League that we are asking members this weekend to pass a call for a study about the money system. We believe that it is critically important to consider and understand how the money system makes it very hard for the League to achieve its goals in the next years. This conversation is urgently needed. Technology is pushing changes to the money and financial system, and it's important for the League to be ready to participate in decisions that may be made very soon. We're here today to explain what we've learned. Here's the call for a study that we proposed at the 2024 League of Women Voters National Convention. We hope you'll consider this study and suggest it in the future. The creation of the nation's money supply and the regulation of its value should support the League's commitment to make democracy work, protect the environment for future generations, and secure equal rights and opportunities for all by meeting basic human needs. Technology is dramatically changing the way our money system works. Further changes are under discussion, and these changes will have significant impact on our commitments. To effectively participate in discussion, the League should study the money system, options, and how these coming changes can best serve League goals and values. So why does the money system matter, and why are we asking for a study? We're here today to convince you that the money system matters greatly to League positions. To increase understanding of why the money system matters to the League's values, policy commitments, democratic public decision-making, and government actions. And understanding why paying attention to the money system now is a matter of some urgency if we want to preserve and improve our democracy. Let's start with a quick overview of our priorities and the money issue. How can we have fair elections when the candidate who spends the most usually wins? In 2022, 94% of winning House candidates spent the most and 82% of Senate. I would be scared to see what those numbers are for this election. How can we boost civic engagement when we work 8-hour days, often have long commutes, no national requirement for paid sick or family leave, and 4 in 10 of us don't even have $400 for an emergency? Many people are short on the time and money required to engage. How can we have equal access for all citizens, especially the marginalized, when wealth disparity is dramatically increasing? How can we honor our planet with environmental protections and regenerative actions when the idea that profits matter more than prevention and protection is embedded in foundational systems? How can we protect the civil and human rights of women and minorities when there is an unpaid and discounted caring economy that the current system ignores? And there's so much more. The availability and distribution of money and the money system that boxes in availability and distribution matter on every one of our issues. Let's briefly consider the League's priorities. As we do that, be thinking about how each of these issues and policies is thwarted or supported by who has the money and whether there is enough money to do the right thing. We are the League of Women Voters. Perhaps at the top of our priority list is a vibrant, inclusive, participatory democracy. We set out on a path to this goal in 1920, over 100 years ago. We have not yet achieved our goal. So why not? Again, why not? Values and positions on issues of democracy are a top priority for the League. We advocate for fair elections with equal access to the polls. Candidates' qualifications are known and matter to voters. Voters are informed and participate. All citizens are represented, and decisions are issue-based. Each of these issues is impacted by the money system. Supreme Court Justice Louis D. Brandeis said, "We can have democracy in this country, or we can have a great wealth concentrated in the hands of a few, but we can't have both." We can see the truth of this statement. Wealth concentrates in fewer and fewer hands. A wealthy few control public policy, too often determined by what is profitable for them instead of what is best for the common good. So why is this happening? Through our study, we discovered that we have a money system that systemically transfers wealth from the many to the few, increases inequality, and allows profits to be the nation's highest priority. As League members, we work hard for fair and honest elections. But how can we ever have fair elections while the concentrated private wealth can manipulate them? How can democracy survive concentration of wealth in the hands of the few? The League takes position on natural resources and resource management. We advocate for natural resource management and sustainability, for natural resources for the benefit of all, environmental protection and pollution control, keeping public lands in the hands of the public, taking action on climate change now. Every one of these issues is impacted by the money system. The League takes positions that advocate for healthy communities and the social policies that support them. The League takes social policy positions that support healthy communities with equality of opportunity, fair housing, pay equity, sufficient and satisfactory employment, quality education, meeting basic human needs like income assistance, housing supply, transportation, communication networks, childcare, early intervention for children at risk, and the list goes on. And again, every one of these issues is impacted by the money system. The League takes positions on international relations, advocating for collaborative international peacekeeping, advancing the social and economic well-being of the world's people, protecting the integrity of the world environment, fair trade and reduced trade barriers, fostering economic prosperity based on long-term public interest, and much more. Every one of these issues is impacted by the money system. So you're likely wondering why we assert the money system has an impact on all of these issues. And that's a question we hope to answer for you here. To do our best to answer that question, here's what we're going to cover. Some of this will be familiar to those of you who came 2 years ago. We're reviewing some of the basics and hoping you will take away an understanding of why, if we want to make our money system work for democracy and for our league commitments and values, then we must advocate for some changes. As mentioned before, changes are coming anyway. And if the league is going to be able to take positions on the changes under discussion, we must first expand our understanding of the following. Money. What is money? What is a money system and what are the consequences of this money system? What is our money system now? How does the money system impact implementation of league positions? Are there other options? And why is a conversation important now? First, what is money? We all use it. Most of us would like to have more of it, but what is it really? Why does the value of our money change? Money as we know it in our daily lives, wherever in the world we may be today, takes three general forms: coins, paper bills, and account money. Account money is money that exists only as numbers in accounts. Today, that means on computers. Account money transfers from one party to another by debit cards, checks, electronic transfers. All these forms of money are interchangeable and they are all money. So, what is this money that we take for granted as an indispensable social tool for living? Money is as money does. As money changes hands, it functions as a medium of exchange, a unit of account to measure value, and a store of value over time and distance. That's the basic and commonly accepted definition of money. However, money is more than its direct functions. It plays a greater role in society. Trillions of dollars move around in our economy every single day. Every day, new money is added or removed from the supply. It's a staggering amount of money. It has an impact on the distribution of resources and consequently affects our worldviews, our attitudes towards life, and the health and prosperity of our communities. This deep entrenchment of money in so much of what we do every day means that a money system is a form of social and economic energy, a bestower and expression of power, and money is a formative influence on the economy and on society. We've described money. Next, what is a money system? Well, sorry. Often below the radar in politics and policy discussions, the structure and mechanics of the money system determine what we use as a means of payment, what it is that makes money money. We're here to make sure the system, structure, and mechanics is on the radar when we talk about league positions and the money needed to fund them. What makes up a money system? A money system is established by law. A money system may or may not support the overall aims of the government that makes the law. The law that establishes the system sets the forms our money takes: coin, paper, account, and digital. The law establishes the agencies, the policies, the permissions, and protocols that add and subtract money to and from the supply. This establishes who has the privilege and power of money creation, how it is done, and who gets first use of new money, and what is its first use. The law sets an intended purchasing power standard. Does the system intend to keep the value of our money steady over time or increase or decrease its value? This system choice establishes whether the value of our money goes up, goes down, or stays the same. These system choices are at the foundation, the roots of our economy, and have a significant and formative influence on the economy and society. For clarity, here's a quick consideration of the difference between the money system structure, monetary policy, and fiscal policy. Fiscal policy is about the flow of funds that already exist. Fiscal policy refers to the policies government sets about what and how much to tax, spend, borrow, and invest. Then, at the foundation, the money system supports or thwarts and to some extent boxes in our own and our government's fiscal choices. Monetary policy is about regulating the amount of money in the supply to meet the chosen purchasing power standard and other goals if desired. The supply of money in any system may grow to accommodate population and productivity increases. A money system can also be designed and regulated to have an increasing, decreasing, or steady value of the money unit over time to achieve the chosen purchasing power standard. More or less money than is needed is created. The laws of supply and demand mean there will be a change in the value of each unit of money. We call the change that happens when there is too much money inflation. Prices go up as the value of each money unit goes down. We call the change that happens when there's not enough money deflation. The value of each money unit goes up and prices go down. A system choice establishes whether the value of the money over time will remain the same, a steady value money, or will be a unit of money that decreases in value or that increases in value. There are other factors that can have an impact on the value of our money, but foundationally, whether the amount of money in the supply is in proportion to the number of exchanges people make is the biggest factor, and this is a system issue. The choice of purchasing power or value standard and the mechanism for regulating this growth of the money supply is important because changes in the value of our money impact everyone. A money system can support or undermine League of Women Voters positions, and that is why we are here and why it is important to have a national discussion about the money system and how it can better support our League efforts.
And it's my turn. I'm Virginia Hammond from the Portland League of Women Voters. So what is our money system? Any money system will have the characteristics we have described. Now let's consider what is our money system in the United States today. Of great importance, our money system is established by a law of Congress. Under the U.S. Constitution, Article 1, Section 8, the Constitution gives Congress the power to create the money supply. The Supreme Court has ruled it can provide the money, the means of payment, in any way that Congress chooses, as long as it remains constitutional. The Federal Reserve Act is the law that established our system in use today. Though, since our founding as a nation, we've used a variety of kinds of money, which is a fascinating topic for further study. The Federal Reserve Act first passed and was signed into law in 1913. It has been amended several times since. It can be further amended with a new law. Our money, the US dollar, takes the three different forms previously described: coins, bills, and account money. Account money, again, is money that exists only as numbers in accounts. How much of each form of money do we use? Bills and coins comprise about 5% of our money supply. All the rest is account money. So the money supply consists of the bills and coins and the demand deposits in banks, the money we have in our checking accounts. The money supply is not static. It grows. Here you see Federal Reserve data indicating the rise of the money supply from 1980 to 2024. On the right, you can see the COVID bump that was a primary cause of inflation, then the reduction to bring down inflation, and the resumption of the steady increase. So who adds and subtracts money from the supply? This is a critically important question. Let's just take a really quick poll. Write your answer down. In our system in the United States, where does all this new money come from? Who adds and subtracts money from the supply? Who creates the money? The government, the Federal Reserve, private banks, or you can say, I don't have a clue. Go ahead and write it down. Well, many people are surprised to learn that all account money is created by private banks. It is created by the private banking system as they make loans. When banks make loans, they don't transfer money from anyone's savings or checking account to give to a borrower. They create new money with every loan they make. That may strike some of you as preposterous. I thought it was when I first heard it, but it is true. This is such a crazy making concept, but it's done with very simple difference in accounting that only private commercial banks are allowed to do. The Bank of England says succinctly, the majority of money in the modern economy is created by commercial banks making loans. The bulk of our money, all of our account money, is created not by government, not by the Federal Reserve Bank, but by the banks in every community where banks are making loans. The money supply goes up with a bank loan that is made and goes back down as bank loans are paid back. Let's consider the consequences of this money system. What are they? Today's money system requires rising debt, which establishes a growth imperative to service the debt. This system produces an unstable economy. Booms and busts occur regularly. Systemic debt and the system's demand for ever increasing debt transfers wealth from the many to the few. This concentrates wealth and skews power and resource distribution. Servicing the debt, too, often results in exploitation and degradation, lowest possible wages, ignoring the cost of the environment or to the carrying economy. Violence and war increase. So let's take a closer look at these consequences, keeping in mind the League's values and policy commitments. This system's demand for increasing debt has many consequential impacts. Population and productivity growth mean we need more money in the supply. But in this system, there would be no money if there were no debt. As the money supply grows to meet our needs, debt must grow. The debt of individuals, businesses, students, and the government must all grow in this system. The debt is required. Our government borrows to cover the gap between revenue and expenditures. If the government could make up the difference between the amount collected in taxes and the money spent by creating money itself, by creating new money, there would be no federal debt. Here's the US federal government debt from 1965 to the present. Notice the increase in the debt roughly follows the curve of the money supply. It's silly to be arguing about growing government debt when the money system requires increasing debt all around. Many economists, probably most, regard high debt levels as a sign of a country's economy moving toward trouble. In any case, the government pays interest on all the money it borrows, which constitutes an added expense to government operation. In 2023, servicing the national government debt of $34 trillion, a debt to private Treasury securities holders, cost the government $678 billion. This was 9% of total spending of $7.9 trillion and 15% of the revenues of $4.5 trillion. Payments for interest are significant at nearly every level of government, and that debt is in partly an outcome of the system. What percent of revenues in your city or state's budgets pay investors service on debt rather than having that money available for direct public services? Failing to understand how the money system works, legislators point to the high government debt as a reason not to spend on the things the League of Women Voters advocates for, such as infrastructure, healthcare, education, environmental protection, and support for families. Not only government debt has gone up, debt in all non-governmental sectors has gone up too. Today, there is more debt in nearly every sector of the economy: personal debt, student debt, mortgage debt, business debt. Student loan debt, of great concern to young voters, has risen drastically. Prior to the 1960s, student debt was uncommon. This graph covers less than 20 years. No wonder young people are frustrated and angry. There are many factors in the dramatic increase in student debt, and nearly all those factors are connected to the money system's demand for increasing debt. One important point about debt: there's nothing wrong with debt itself. It can be extraordinarily useful for people seeking to make major purchases or for businesses making investments. However, this could all still happen with a money system that uncouples debt from money creation. Here's a chart comparing the US money supply to the US debt of households, businesses, and government. Notice that the debt is many times the money supply. This is because debt can stack or nest. If the bank loans me $1,000, creating $1,000 in the money supply, I loaned 500 of it to you. Now we have $1,500 in debt, but only the $1,000 in the money supply. This chart unfortunately leaves out the financial sector, which is a maze of interconnecting debt on debt on debt, some creating new money and some not. When the system requires increasing debt, all our efforts to reduce it will be futile. This is as true for our aggregate personal and business debts as it is for government debt. To anchor the ball with the guarantee of full faith, credit, and the wealth of the nation. The second system requirement is a growth imperative. It begins with the system requirement to increase debt, but growing the debt means that all financial activity must grow to pay for servicing the debt and the interest. This creates a business growth imperative. If businesses must grow, we must consume more. Having more to consume requires more resources. And too often, this leads to resource degradation and exploitation. And it has resulted in a growth imperative deeply embedded in our individual and national psyches. We're never enough. There's never enough. Everything must grow more and more and more. This impacts the planet and nearly all league issues. This is a stress on each and every one of us, and an impossible and unsustainable imperative on a finite planet. We can grow better, but we cannot keep growing in size and consumption. Number three, the third major system requirement results from the economic growth imperative. If profits are one of the ways economic growth is incentivized and measured, there are no similar systemic incentives for improving our environment and our health. When economic growth is required, profits become a higher priority than people and community health. The privatization of public services, against which the League takes a position, is a result of valuing private profits most highly. We described 3 requirements of the money system, which today is the Federal Reserve System. The Fed states that their mandate is to pursue 3 goals set for it by Congress. Maximum employment. Okay, where does work-life balance fit into a goal of maximum employment? Keep annual inflation, the decrease in the value of the dollar unit to a stable 2%. And moderate long-term interest rates on all debt, because debt is required. In the Fed's own words, monetary policy complements fiscal policy to, quote, support economic growth. As we measure it, economic growth is about profits and size. It's not about people or society growing smarter and healthier. When increasing debt, a growth imperative, and profits over people are required, what results? Well, an unstable economy. First, the current money system contributes to the instability of our economy. When times are good and the economy seems to be growing, banks are eager to lend and people are willing to borrow. The longer those good times last, the more willing banks are to make riskier loans. All of that lending increases debt. When something happens that increases expenses or reduces income, like an oil embargo of the 1970s or COVID, loans begin to default. When that happens, banks become more reluctant to lend. Just when more money is needed to help people and firms to deal with increased expenses, the banks decrease the money supply. The willingness of banks to make risky loans when times are good itself has led to loan defaults, as happened with subprime mortgages leading up to and precipitating the 2008 recession. The current system of supplying money has caused some booms and busts and has amplified the severity of all booms and busts. The busts always cause job losses and cause suffering to those on the low end of the income scale. The instability of the economy makes planning hard for businesses. Small businesses with little reserves suffer the most. Because the money supply is in the hands of the banks, they respond to serve their own interests. This means that wobbles in the financial system amplify wobbles in the economy as a whole. Recessions occur, people's incomes are compromised. On the graph of the money supply from earlier, the recessions and depressions are identified with the gray vertical lines. They have been a recurring aspect of our economy. In this debt-based system, there is a transfer and concentration of wealth in private hands. Because all bank money enters circulation through lending, there's interest being paid to the lenders on every dollar in circulation, a flow of money from the many to the few. When government borrows by selling bonds and taxpayers pay the interest, again, money flows from the many, the taxpayers, to the few, the lenders. This systemic transfer results in rising wealth inequality. This increasing disparity in wealth means that power and resource distribution is also skewed. In a population of 320 million, roughly, Forbes reported in April this year that we have 831 billionaires, and they are richer than ever, worth a combined 5.7 trillion. At the same time, as we noted earlier, 4 in 10 Americans do not have enough money to cover a $400 emergency expense. And that's up from 3 in 10 in 2021, just a couple years ago. Here's a way to look at who owns the wealth. This chart by Edward N. Wolfe at New York University shows the percentages of national wealth on top and the percent of the population that owns this wealth. You can see that's on the bottom. You can see the squeeze on the middle class. This is a great chart and it's a bit out of date. The skewing of wealth is even more severe today. Today, the top 1% own 35% of all the wealth, and the bottom 40% of the population own no wealth at all. In fact, many have more debts than assets. As this disparity continues to increase, we're seeing signs of a trend toward political violence. The current money system results in power inequality, and that compromises democracy. Because money affects political decisions, increases of wealth lead to increase in power. Increased power leads to increased wealth, as those in power change or bend laws and regulations in their favor. It's a self-reinforcing cycle. Concentration of wealth is a natural process which occurs in most, if not all, societies. But in societies committed to liberty for all, it is the responsibility of government to limit wealth and power concentration to make democracy possible. The current money system, rather than limiting the concentration of wealth, is a major cause of wealth concentration. Money systems can support democracy or can instead undermine democracy. This is an important reason why the League can benefit from understanding the money system, because the money system affects democracy itself. When it's a system imperative to have debt, profits must come before people's well-being, and this money system encourages the exploitation and degradation of people and planet. This exploitation, degradation, austerity lead to war. The human, social, and environmental desolation of violence and war again increase the need for debt. And in this system, that's a good thing. When government debt occurs, austerity is demanded. That means cutting back on crucial human services and prevention strategies. And this leads to further misery and greater debt and greater transfer of wealth. The desolation of poverty and war create inescapable debts, and the expense of crisis remediation and reconstruction, all more expensive than prevention, but that show as economic growth are the system. Can we afford not spending? When proposals come before Congress for spending on infrastructure, healthcare, education, and meeting human needs, the question is invariably raised as to whether we can afford these things, especially in view of the already very high federal debt. But can we afford not spending? If we have the labor and raw materials to do these things, why should a lack of money, which can be created by keystrokes on computers, prevent us from doing them?
Thanks, Virginia, for these questions. And given these consequences of the current money system, it seems appropriate to advocate for change. But this raises the question, are there alternatives which will better support League values? Our Athens study group started out with a plan to study the current money system and to evaluate all the alternatives. Well, we found it impossible to adequately evaluate all the alternatives and their possible consequences, but we did find it possible to settle on what we think are good guiding principles to use in evaluating options. We came up with a set of features we think are important. And these are available at our Ohio League website, which is shown on this slide and will be shown again on the last slide. And we've saved the good news until now. There really are options. We, the people, have choices, and the League can play a role in understanding our choices and advocating for changes in the current system that could support rather than thwart our League values, goals, and policies. Well, a wonderful new economic model is taking hold. It was created by economist Kate Raworth. Her book, Doughnut Economics, was published in 2017. Professor Raworth offers the economic thinking needed to bring humanity into the donut, which is the light green area that represents the safe and just space for humanity and a regenerative and distributive economy. This space is confined by an ecological ceiling, the dark green outer band. These are the limits on our behavior that can cause catastrophe when we overshoot their bounds. In the center of the donut, in the center there is the social foundation of human needs that must be met for us to lead safe and just lives. When people experience a shortfall in food, housing, social equity, and so on, we are not in a safe space for humanity. Kate's graphic is a useful frame for considering to let us know all the work that the League needs, that the League does to keep us in the donut and where the challenges lie. The money system as it is today plays a role in every one of the areas of social foundation, that's in the center, and the various aspects of the ecological ceiling. We celebrate the impact this very insightful woman is having on the field of economics. And it's a useful model for framing why the League works so hard to assure that our democracy not only survives, but works inclusively to make good decisions for the future. Well, as we work to understand the system and consider changes, it's useful to compare the current system with at least one alternative. Fundamentally, there are two general systems, one in which money is a public utility and asset, and the other in which money is debt and a public liability. Let's compare these two fundamentally different systems, money creation by private banks through lending and money creation by government, debt-free. Although bank creation of money has been dominant in our country's history, there have been episodes of government creation of money. These include paper money creation in the colonies, as advocated by Ben Franklin, the Continentals, which were used to pay the costs of the Revolutionary War, and the greenbacks issued during the Lincoln administration to pay for the Civil War. Let's compare the basics of money created by lending into circulation and spending into circulation. When government creates money with no debt attached, its first use is for the public well-being. The money circulates in the economy and stays there, except for the amount the government takes back in taxes. And even that money is spent back into the economy. When banks create money as debt credit by lending, it circulates the economy for a while until the debt is repaid. The interest payments go into the bank's pockets, and they create new money by lending to someone else. Banks are literally paid by the public to create and maintain the money supply. They do some work for this payment, vetting borrowers, but it's a net privilege for the banks and a big money earner. It only works because more loans are being made than loans being repaid, so the money supply and the debt can grow. All of our account money is on loan, and we are paying interest on all of it. In order to have more money, we have to have more debt. On the other hand, when government creates money and spends it into the economy for the public good, no debt is created. The money created is a public asset, no debt attached. Now, we in the League work incredibly hard to achieve our goals, and yet our efforts are hampered because the money system distorts democracy and constrains our efforts for improvements. A money system is a choice, and the money system can thwart our goals, or we can have a money system that supports and amplifies our efforts to achieve a just, inclusive, and highly participatory democracy. Now, changes are coming, and these changes may support democracy and economic justice, or they may work against them. It's important for the League to be ready to participate in decisions about the money and financial systems that can have grave or glorious consequences. We'll wrap up with the question, why study the money system now? Why is this a matter of urgency for the League at this time? What is it that's pushing us toward change, whether we're ready or not? The crises we face are widely recognized. The climate environmental crisis may be existential, and our inability to address it results from our social, political, and economic crises. We seem to be locked in systems that render us incapable of directing our resources to address the environmental crisis. As debts continue to rise, they reach a point where there is no way to pay for them, and crisis ensues. Extremes in wealth disparity shift us from a participatory democracy to a plutocracy, inevitably leading to violence. Our democracy is under attack from an autocratic plutocracy. A handful of people with extreme wealth dictate more policy than is healthy. Our life expectancy and general health is declining. Too many of us are stressed, depressed, and resorting to medication. There's great ferment in the realm of currency considerations. Technological innovations are pushing the central banks into pilot projects. Cryptocurrencies and other alternatives are changing the conversation. Any of these options on the horizon represents changes that may or may not support League goals and positions. So what is pulling us toward change? Monetary policy affects final fiscal decisions. As reflected in the League's policy guide, Impact on Issues, the League advocates for environmental protection and for taking steps to minimize climate change. It also advocates for the support of families and children, for preventing or reducing poverty. It supports government expenditures for education and health care. All these things require the marshaling of society's resources. They require funding at the national, state, and local levels. These fiscal issues are affected by the money system, which in controlling the money supply determines who creates the money and who gets the money when it is created. From our study, the general choice seems clear. We need to change our money system from money as debt, which is a public liability, to a system in which the first use of money is by private borrowers for private interests. And we need to change it to a money system where money is a public asset, a public utility, a money that is first used for the public benefit. Let's learn about why, how, and if, and how it could be done. Well, these days, policy wonks are talking. If the League is going to participate in public discussions, we need to prepare. Many people and organizations are aware of the need for change, and several proposals have been offered. These include monetary reform, the full transition that I just mentioned. The Alliance for Just Money has a ready draft law for consideration to do this. But there are also several legal scholars who recently proposed ways to democratize money, moving toward the goal of full transition, but in stepwise and partial ways. Other partial options are listed on this slide. Some of them have already been introduced into Congress. So as we have seen, our current money system requires increasing debt and a growth imperative that imperils any hope for sustainability. It produces an unstable economy, concentration of wealth that threatens democracy, and fails to provide government with the means to address the contemporary problems of climate change and meeting basic human needs for everyone. So we are asking the League to recognize the centrality of the money system for democracy and for meeting the policy goals of the League. And secondly, We're asking that the League begin to prepare itself to facilitate a national discussion of these vital issues by studying the monetary system. So let me conclude then by reading again the study proposal for the 2024 League of Women Voters National Convention that we asked the convention attendees to consider and approve. It was not approved, but there were quite a few people who voted for it. Here's the proposal. The creation of the nation's money system supply and the regulation of its value should support the League's commitment to make democracy work, to protect the environment for future generations, and to secure equal rights and opportunities for all by meeting basic human needs. Technology is dramatically changing the way our money system works. Further changes are under discussion, and these changes will have significant impact on our commitments. To effectively participate in discussion, the League will study the monetary system, options, and how these coming changes can best serve League goals and values. Thank you for being with us for this presentation. We look forward to your questions and comments.